We know the federal government is under a hiring freeze until mid-April, but that doesn't mean that all hiring has stopped. We still have thousands of people every week getting hired. It's possible within 3 categories, and that's immigration enforcement, public safety, and national security. We're going to look at 5 examples, and some of these jobs pay over $150,000 a year. Let's get into it. Number 5, in the Department of Air Force. This is a lead security specialist. It has a salary range of $88,000 to $137,000 a year. It's in Hill Air Force Base, Utah. This job is using direct hire authority, meaning it's open to the public. Anybody can apply, but I think for a job like this, it's going to attract somebody with military experience. You don't need military experience, you just need to meet the specialized experience, which is the ability to lead a team, be able to conduct fact-finding and analysis, assess progress, and understand OPSEC concepts, skills in developing and analyzing security programs. This job is in the 0080 job series, which covers security administration. There's a lot of positions like this one that are open right now, and for pretty much all of them, you do not need any educational requirement. There is no college degree requirement for a job like this. And I want you to check out number 7 here. If you look at number 7, it says, this position is designated national security position. That's how you know without a doubt that it's exempt from the hiring freeze. And this is Department of Air Force, which falls under Department of Defense. A lot of jobs in the Department of Defense, they're exempt. Over 1,000 of them. If you go on usajobs.gov and you look, you'll see plenty of them that are exempt. Now, it's not every single job. The job still has to be related to national security. It can't just be any old job. But if you run the search, you'd be surprised. About 36% of all federal government jobs, they're in the Department of Defense. Okay, number 4. In the CBP, we have a human resource assistant. This job has a salary range of $50,000 to $65,000 a year. 5 vacancies in Indianapolis, Indiana. This job is in the 0203 job series, which is HR assistant. And you'll notice by looking at this job, looking at the experience requirements, a lot of it is you need to have experience assisting, not necessarily taking the lead in doing the task or the function. Now, I talk about HR being difficult to break into, but a position like this is on the lower side. This is a GS7. And check this out. The experience you need is assisting HR specialists in projects and studies, assisting employees in preparing personnel forms and responding to inquiries. I think for this job, you can use experience outside of the federal government. Let's say you did HR in the military or in the private sector. You can use some of that experience, potentially be qualified for a position like this. And there's 5 openings here. I don't know if you ever lived in Indiana. I lived in Indianapolis. Wasn't that bad. Stayed there a few years. So this could work out for a lot of different people. And it goes against the narrative that they're not hiring administrative personnel. They're only hiring law enforcement. That's not true. It's not only law enforcement. It's not only border patrol. You can find an admin position just like this. This specific position was posted 3 days after the hiring freeze was enacted. And the Department of Homeland Security, they have a ton of sub-agencies. If you look at FEMA, if you look at CBP, if you look at ICE, these are all, same thing with Coast Guard. These are all sub-agencies of Department of Homeland Security. A lot of them are focused on national security, and they're still going to be open. They're still going to be trying to hire individuals. Number 3, talking about FEMA, this one's in FEMA, program analyst. You got a salary range here of $120,000 to $156,000 a year in Washington, D.C. We got another one in DHS. I want to highlight this one specifically because it's the 0343 job series. So they're looking for an analyst. A lot of people, they can be eligible, they can be qualified for a position just like this. And when you take a peek at the specialized experience, you're going to see exactly why. But this job, 4 days after the hiring freeze, that's when it was posted. All right, let's get into the specialized experience. You need experience communicating technical program information, providing management with short-range and long-range recommendations from studies, and serving as a project coordinator on projects. This is also one of many DHS job announcements that is telling the applicant you can only submit a 5-page resume. So if you're sitting there with an 8-page resume, you can submit it, But nobody's reading the last 3 pages. They're only going to be focused on the first 5 pages. So keep that in mind when you're editing your resume, when you're uploading your resume on usajobs.gov. This job is also a GS-13, which I feel is pretty much the bare minimum if you're trying to live by yourself in the DC area, unless you're prepared to make a long commute, like an hour plus. I know one guy, he gets on the Amtrak and he comes into DC from Williamsburg, Virginia. He says it's about 2.5 hours to make that commute. Now, this is before they had the return to office mandate. So he's going to end up quitting soon, looking for another position, because there's no way he can do that 2.5 hour commute. That's one way. So if you times it by 2, going there and coming back, that's like 5 hours a day. So ask yourself, are you prepared to be a super commuter? Okay, number 2 is the USPS. You can go over on usps.com and search through over 100 jobs that are open right now. The USPS has 2 main categories of job. You have pre-career and then you have career jobs. If you're looking for the benefits, if you're looking for FERS and the rest of it, you want the career job. Otherwise, the pre-career jobs, they don't really have that many benefits. Now, a lot of these positions are for carriers, meaning you're handling, you're delivering the mail. But there are also positions here for secretary, for auto technician. There's also one here for a sales associate. So if you decide to go the USPS route, understand that you will be under the accepted service. And if you want to jump into another federal agency, they need to have an interagency agreement before you can make that jump. But it's possible. It is something that people have done in the past and will continue to do. So this is for you, if you know your postal service building or office nearby in your hometown, you know they're hiring, it might be worth considering applying for a job like that. Okay, number 1 is in the VA as a medical support assistant with a salary between $45,000 and $58,000 a year in Hines, Illinois. You might have noticed that there's a little orange-yellow box on the upper right-hand corner of this job announcement. It specifically says that the job closes after the first 30 applications. Why is this? There's a very low barrier to entry for a job like this. This is in the 0679. It doesn't require that much experience and it's open to the public. So the understanding or the anticipation is a lot of people are going to be applying for this job. And they want to somewhat expedite the hiring process. They don't want to look at hundreds of resumes. They want to look at just 30, and that's why it's listed there. Check this experience out. You only need 6 months of office, customer service, or admin type experience. This is a GS5 position, so even if you do not have the 6 months of work experience, as long as you have 1 year of education above a high school diploma, you would be eligible for this. Now, speaking of the VA, they recently announced there's 300,000 jobs that are exempt from the hiring freeze. Most of these are all under the medical job series, which is the 0600. Now, there are also positions where they're in the VBA. So if there's a function that would prohibit a veteran from getting their benefits, they're allowed to hire those individuals as well. I recently received an email from someone who applied to the VA. This is an example from HR assuring an applicant that because she applied to a 0671 job, she was still being considered regardless of the hiring freeze. As you're searching through these jobs, you need to make sure you're using the filters. Search by open date and in descending order. That's going to show you the most recently posted job announcements on usajobs.gov. You want to do that, and you want to look through there for any and all jobs that were posted on January 21st and then after. Because the hiring freeze was announced January 20th. So for an agency to post a job on the 21st or later, that means there's a high probability that that job is exempt from the hiring freeze, and you can start applying for those jobs. Now, in a situation like this with a hiring freeze with so much uncertainty, there's 2 main types of people. You have one person that's going to try, even though with limited jobs available, there's probably going to be more competition. That's kind of a daunting concept in itself. Then there's people that will not try. They feel like the hiring freeze applies to everything, or they feel too much anxiety and stress to even bother. Now, for those people, they're going to wait until the middle of April, which is fine because in the middle of April, there should be a lot more opportunities. The hiring freeze will be lifted. Just like in 2017, there will be an increase in hiring. Even if the government shrinks by a small percentage, there will still be an increase in hiring in April. Now, what are you doing until April? What you need to focus on is, number one, what is your job series? Have you identified a job series that fits you the best? Number two, how competitive is your resume right now? If I took a look at it, is it competitive? Is it a 9 out of 10 or a 10 out of 10, or is it more like a 5 out of 10? I think you can be honest with yourself and you can clearly assess where do you stand right now when it comes to the competition. Because this is a great time to not only identify your job series, to strengthen your resume, and then practice on those interview skills. Start doing some mock interviews. And in addition to that, start networking with people. Look at LinkedIn if you're not currently in the federal government. Start requesting connections from individuals and agencies so they can give you some of their perspective on how it's like to work for that agency. You can be doing all that right now. Now, if you want to understand the federal hiring process better, from the time that you create a usajobs.gov account to when you're applying to applications and when you get the interview and job offer, if you want to understand all of that, I want you to check this video out next. If you need a federal resume example, check out the links down below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one.